gentlemen, welcome to My T Sharpie Podcast, aka the Black Awareness Rally Podcast. You could be rocking with anybody else in the world right now, but you are here rocking with us, and for that we do appreciate you. It's your man Pledge alongside my main man B.
What up? What up?
And we're all honored to have Dr. Glenn Simmons join us today. Say what's up, Dr. Glenn.
Hey, what's going on, people?
Yes, so we are back at it with another live edition of My T Sharpie Podcast on Facebook. So say what's up to the party people, B.
Yeah, what's up? Shut up.
Now that we got live video, you just gonna cut the audio out, huh?
Hey, listen. I ain't know what to say. I ain't know what to say nothing or squeal. But yeah, man.
You like your boy Coming to America? He said, "I was so happy. I didn't know, whether to break dance, when he finally met the king." So
the boy got his own money.
No doubt.
Trying to get this popping for a minute.
I hear you.
How y'all boys' afternoon going?
It's going well, man. Happy Easter, everybody. I mean, I know it doesn't feel like Easter, but happy Easter. It is still Easter, Resurrection Day.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Hey, man, be careful with
I
that coffee.
streamed the service today.
You said what? You streamed the
I
service?
streamed the service today, yes.
Oh, we got
nice.
Glenn, I've been coughing since last year.
Oh, okay. All right.
In March.
It's not a new cough. We don't want no new coughs.
Nah.
If you listen to past episodes of My T Sharpie Podcast, there's evidence of Brandon's coughing. So
yeah, this
all right. You got past precedent working in your favor.
Right.
Gotcha.
All right, let's do it, fellas. Let's do it. Because we're gonna try to do a record where we go in here and try to get in and out in 45 minutes. See if we can make that happen.
No doubt.
All right,
good luck.
You got it.
I mean, I'll start with the Black Awareness Rally. I have two moments that are kind of intertwined together for my entertainment moment, and then also the Black Awareness bikini contest moment of the week. My favorite show of all time, The Wire. It was a report out that it's reached a new found popularity with everybody staying home and streaming it. Like the streams are up through the roof for The Wire, and not only that, but one of my favorite Twitter followers happens to be Miss Jamel Hill. She's going to be hosting a daily podcast that where her and Van Lathan break down all 68 episodes of The Wire. Okay. So, as I said, one of my favorite Twitter followers, Jamel Hill. I mean, she's just all around content creator, whether it be sports, politics, or just funny stuff to make Black people laugh. She's a great Twitter follower. So, those are my two moments wrapped into one.
That's what's up. I don't have anything as entertaining, I suppose, but Shea Moisture, the corporation that's responsible for a lot of our favorite hair care products in Target, they just announced that they're going to start a $1 million fund to support Black businesses, especially during this economic turn down. Is that the term, Pledge? Turn down? Is that a
downturn?
Downturn?
Yeah.
I don't want to sound scary. But yeah, they announced a grant that small businesses can apply for to take advantage of that. And the CEO happens to be a sister. So I guess I knocked both mine out in one shot. That was my Miss Black Awareness moment. Her name is Rachel Lee. Dang, I forgot. Rather last name. I think it's Williams. Yeah, but that's the new name. That's the official new name for the segment, the bikini contest. We're gonna try to stay true to the film, Miss Black Awareness. So Players are a little disappointed, but you know what I mean. We're gonna run with that.
Yeah. Way to throw me under the bus, big guy. It's all good though.
Yeah, I'm here for you, man.
We get company, you start acting up. That's all. It's all good. You know what I'm saying? We get company, you start acting up.
Keep it 100. But hey man, shout out to the fellas that's watching on Facebook. I see Ken Jarrell. I see LA. Appreciate y'all for joining in. Hopefully some other friends will join in. And if y'all want, man, y'all can make this a watch party on y'all profile and get 2 or 3 more people in the room.
For sure.
You got to.
And we also want to tell them about interacting, so they can leave the comments, questions, you know, all around well wishes, you know, to you know, interact and make themselves a part of the podcast as well.
True. Dr. Simmons, aka
Hey.
Gucci.
Dr. Gucci.
You know, Fauci. I had to put it together. Couldn't help it.
I'm over here trying to share and distribute the podcast to folks, and you talking crazy to me.
Hey, you know, both of y'all.
We had to keep it hip hop.
Right. All right. So, Mr. Dr. Simmons, did you have participate in the Black Awareness Rally moments? Or it's not mandatory, but
yeah. Nah, I mean, I don't have anything that really fits like neatly in that segment. So I'm gonna try to stay up out of it. I want to mess with the flow, and y'all know I like to talk. So
all right. Well, fellas, we wanted to kind of curtail this episode and stick to something that's near and dear to all of our hearts. It's the Black community. And the biggest piece of information, the biggest piece of news this week has been the pandemic hitting us harder than it's hitting any other community in the nation. And so we wanted to spend some time specifically letting Dr. Simmons, aka Dr. Gucci, walk us through expert opinion on what's happening. So for those of us that may not know Dr. Simmons, he is a fellow USF graduate. That's how the 3 of us met. He is also a Meharry Medical School, HBCU graduate. You said it was molecular biology. Is that?
Yeah, that's my general training background. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a practicing research doctor at the university.
Research scientist. Yeah.
My bad. See, research scientist, which means he's in the lab day in, day out. He'll probably be in there as soon as we get off this call, working on some cures for, is it lung cancer specifically?
So lung cancer is the current focus of one of the main projects in our lab right now. But I'm a professor of immunology, so anything that touches immunology gets my interest.
Oh, wow. Okay. So your whole claim, right? Well, not claim. Your game is just curing things, trying to figure out ways to help our immune system get up and running and fight just about anything. Is that how that works?
Well, a good way of thinking about it is just anytime something comes near my expertise, I try to see how I can be involved and help it out. So this whole pandemic is actually something that kind of falls in that purview, you know? So I studied immunology as a student. I studied in the lab now. So, you know, I'm trying to get some way, you know, take my skills and apply it to this current situation to help out folks.
Okay. Yeah, man, let's do it. So, fellas, we sent and shared an article by the Huffington Post that broke down into a nice little neat group of categories to help us understand what we're dealing with as a community when it comes to the rate of infection and death rates with African Americans. They broke it up into 4 different categories.
Mm-hmm.
We had, you might have it up. I'm trying to work all these screens.
Oh yeah, 4 reasons coronavirus is hitting Black communities so hard. And it was in the Washington Post. It was by a young man by the name of Eugene Scott.
All right.
It was a brother.
Yes,
Didn't know that.
no doubt,
Didn't see the
no
writing.
doubt.
But
Yeah,
I thought it'd be a great idea to give Dr. Simmons a chance to address each of these categories. I know we had a moment to kind of talk about it this past week,
Mhm.
and pretty bad, man. It sounds like the article's pretty much spot on what we came up with. So let's get to it. I'm trying to find the article. Players, let me get the four reasons because I can't find mine right now.
reason number one: higher rates of underlying health conditions and less access to health care. Reason number two: Black Americans hold a lot of essential jobs. Reason number three: insufficient information. And then finally, reason number four is housing disparities.
Hey, all right. So, first and foremost, for most of us that may not be aware, these four reasons are not new things. They're not things that just started happening. These aren't ideas that came about just because of the coronavirus. These are things that have been in existence, uh, basically since recorded history of us being here. So these aren't new phenomena. Uh, we just they're getting highlighted now because this virus is attacking everything and exposing everybody. So, what I wanted to do was give Glenn a chance to, again, from an expert opinion, address some of the issues that we're seeing here listed in the article. Um, for those of us that aren't aware of some stats, just to keep everybody on page with us, was it 13%, 14% of Americans are Black Americans or African American? Um, we suffer an infection. I think CNN said it was like 40% of the infections, but that's not. We didn't have a concrete rate for everybody because we like to look at the country, the three of us, as a collection of smaller countries, and based on the regions, the infection rate for African Americans may be different here and there.
Mhm.
Am I still here? You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, cool. This is loud sound. All right. So the rates aren't the exact same all across the country, but we're overrepresented, which means if you look at all the rate of infections for each ethnic group or communities broken down, idealistically, is it Glenn, you would want to see 13% match the population rate of infection? Would that be like a perfect number?
Right. So when you have a certain number of people in a population, if all things were equal, that would be your best case scenario. That you would be equally represented because it's equally distributed across the board. But we know that in a lot of ways that's not true because just from a geographical standpoint, it's kind of hard to do that, right?
Mhm.
So then the question is, could we at least be within that population? So say, for instance, a major urban center, if that population there is actually higher, like it's 20% or it's 30%, then the question, if everything was equal, then you would want it to be 20 or 30%. So there's always equal representation based on the representation within that population, wherever you are.
Right. All right. So, what are some of the reasons we think that might be? Because again, I did some Africana studies in undergrad, but I know I'm a bit rusty on my research because I don't
Mhm.
have as much time dedicated to keeping up with the information as it comes out. So, why might we see some of the reasons that the numbers are higher in the Black community as opposed to everywhere else?
So I think the Washington Post article itself was pretty good in kind of giving some really large buckets that we can kind of throw it in to say that, yeah, okay, so the idea that you have a lot of people who are still working like essentially normal and sometimes even more hours because there are fewer people who are showing up to work. And a lot of the service industries, so like the hospitality industry, the taxis, bus drivers, for instance. So a lot of them are from a minority background. A lot of them are Black, right?
Mhm.
But then like the reality, because so part of my research is in health disparities. So I'm a molecular biologist, and I also have some background in health disparities work. So I'm not a public health. What's up?
It's health disparities. I don't.
All right, health disparities. So I study the various mechanisms that could lead to one particular population being more adversely affected by a disease than any other population. So you can have health disparities across the board, but when we say it, a lot of times we automatically, when we hear health disparities, we almost always think poor Black folks. That's almost exclusive. It's almost like it's in our psychology now. But health disparities exist in a lot of different ways. But the ones that I'm most, adamant about are going to obviously be those that affect the African American, the Black American population, because those are largely tied to socioeconomic issues. But we're also trying to make sure, again, remember, I'm a biologist, so I'm trying to make sure that there isn't an underlying biology there that we need to also take into account. Okay. So is that clear?
Very much.
All right.
We got a few commenters. We just shared the post for Elliot. Elliot jumped on some things that the article addressed as well. He listed population density in urban centers.
Yeah, that means we mostly live in densely populated areas to where we, like cities like New York and things like that, where a lot of people. So I think that puts us more at a risk as well, as opposed to living in more rural areas to where we don't have as much contact with other people.
Right. No, that's very true. Yeah, that's very true. And unfortunately, though, if we remove that factor, it's still there. So the health issue is by and large a bigger issue, because again, we know, like I know people who've been infected by COVID-19, and their response to that infection, even the mild cases of this disease, is pretty it's impactful. It'll change your life in ways that you might never experience before. And so if we don't look at the urban centers, and let's look at places like Louisiana, for instance, and ignore New Orleans, for instance, because most of Louisiana is not necessarily densely populated. Okay. And you look there and you still see that it's a disproportionate number of African Americans that are being affected. And even if you look at places like North Carolina, and you look in places that are not necessarily it's not Charlotte, okay? So we're not looking at the big cities. You still see that those disproportions are there, and those disproportions are they coincide with maps that we already have in the health disparities field that look at diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and what else did I say? Yeah, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, those types of things. So those things are there already. And this particular infection basically is highlighting where the problems already existed, which I think that article already said. But this is something that a lot of researchers were saying before anything ever was published by anybody in the media. We already knew that this was going to be a problem.
Right. Oh, wait. When you said new, what does that mean? Like y'all could have predicted, or how? What does that state?
I mean, it's a common sense thing. So, and anyone who's familiar with Black culture, and I can't remember who actually coined the term first, but the idea that if a white man has a cold, the Black man got pneumonia.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, so when you see this happening on this scale, your first thought should be, oh God, please don't let it get over here. Oh. Not that it's not coming, but we need to get ready for it. And that's not what happened, unfortunately. And then again, we have some aspects of our society, some aspects of how we live that some people can't do anything about. Because if you got to put food on the table, it's either eat or don't eat. Some people still are in those positions. So you have a lot of people. There's a story, a particular story that went viral actually not long ago about a bus driver. I think he might have been in Michigan, in Detroit.
Yeah, it was in Detroit.
Okay.
So
who convinced that he gotten infected.
Hold on. We spilling over into the second.
Okay. See, I told you, you gotta catch me. You gotta catch me.
I'm listen. This your passion, so I get it. I be the same way. Going back to number one, densely populated areas. Pledge, what might a densely populated area look like? Like from economics, like is that a type of housing or?
No, I mean it's just the amount of people that are in a certain amount of space, like New York City, to where you have millions of people that are jammed into a confined space. I mean that's what densely populated, and that's where that's why New York has been such a hot spot. Not only because you have so many people in a small space, but you have a lot of international people. Like that's a big international hub for people coming in and out from other countries. And so that's one reason why it's a hot spot as well. They were talking about people that had gone, that had been in New York since January. I was in New York in mid-December, so I kind of just missed, everything or whatever. But they were saying that if you were back as far back as January and anywhere around New York City, that you should have been tested just because that's how long it had been brewing in that area with so many people being in such confined spaces up there.
So look,
Yeah.
y'all talk not. I just want to make sure I'm understanding everybody. So I'm in Atlanta. My street isn't, I guess, densely populated because in my mind I'm thinking not only does that mean airports, public transportation, but apartment housing.
Apartment housing is the biggest contributor to that. But then also, when you have individuals who live in places that have a high cost of living, you have a lot of people doubling up, tripling up on that housing, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's not so much an issue with living with multiple people, but it's when multiple people are coming and going. Yeah. So you may have one person who brings it back to everybody. And then they all go to different places because they're all working, because they're trying to be able to afford that housing, right? And so, but the flip side of that, and there's one point, I was putting my finger up, was because New York, because the most one of the most numerous minority populations in the New York City area is actually, it's not African Americans, it's the Hispanic population. So Hispanic population has the brunt of that issue in New York proper, actually, if you look at the statistics. So it does definitely track to that housing issue a lot. So, in case I didn't want to downplay that. So it's really a big deal when you have that inability to not go to work, and then you come into these somewhat crowded situations.
Yeah. And the transit system is a major factor in New York as well. Being in the train and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it seems like we can't avoid it because it's tied so closely to the densely populated spots. We're talking about Elliot. I see. What about abuse of substances that impact cardiopulmonary systems? That's a Glenn word, but I think that would be something we do.
Glenn word.
For I don't know what cardiopulmonary. No,
I know what he's saying.
That's when you're running in the gym. But this was the second point. We're essential workers and we're stuck in positions where we have to continue to work and
right,
be exposed.
Right.
Is that what we're hearing? Okay.
Yeah.
I pledge you the money, man. Glenn, I don't understand. Like,
so for instance, like, so in my neck of the woods, in my world, in healthcare, medical world, essential workers are defined as people that this is a service that actually is necessary for society to function, right? And if people don't show up for that, it's going to create more of a problem for the greater whole, right? And so if a hospital completely shut down, if nobody was in the hospital, that would be a problem. The thing is that you don't just need doctors in a hospital for it to work. If you just had doctors, the hospital would still not function. You need the people who run all the things, sterilizing equipment. You need a lot of people to keep a hospital working properly, especially now. And so with the big run on all the supplies, the PPE, the personal protective equipment, when that stuff started becoming an issue, then you had trouble getting people who worked in the vicinity of the hospital or in the hospital, but not necessarily dealing with patients. They couldn't even get the proper equipment because It was more important to make sure that the people who actually had to put hands on patients had the equipment. And so until a lot of places were able to overcome that, you had issues with people were trying their best. But again, from a medical standpoint, from a biology standpoint, covering your face with a piece of cloth doesn't really protect you all that much. It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. But it's not the best thing. You get me? What's up? Go ahead, man.
Did you just say covering your face with cloth is not the best thing, but better than nothing?
Yes, that's exactly what I said.
So, players, I'm sure you've seen it online. It's a hustle for people that I think they mean well, and I think they need the money. It's a hustle now to create cloths at home and sell them online, and some people even donate them.
Yes.
That's
it's better than nothing. I'm not saying don't do it. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you compare it to the things that people use when we deal with like if I go and I'm doing work and I'm working with something that is clearly airborne and infectious or noxious that could kill me, I'm going to have a respirator, okay, that's going to filter out everything that could possibly get into me and make me sick.
Okay.
So when you start running out of those things and you're in a situation where there's a lot of virus floating around, that cloth is not necessarily going to do 100% of the job. It might not even do 50% of the job, but it will do enough to maybe protect you so you can get your butt out of there. But if you're working in that space all day, like some of these service workers have to do, some of these people who are part of the environmental staff, some of these people who are involved dealing with the cafeterias, it's like they're coming in contact with stuff. And the thing is, on top of that, and I know I'm ranting a little bit, but I got to say this stuff. Not everyone is trained to deal with things like that. Just because you have a mask, if you don't know that you have to deglove a certain way, you have to take the mask off a certain way in a certain order, don't go to your car, grab your doorknob with your gloves on, get in the car with your gloves on, take them off inside the car. You just brought everything that you were protecting yourself from into your environment.
So is there like a real quick way of getting that done? Because I got my mask here. I don't necessarily have gloves, but I believe is that a thing where you grab something else before you touch something else?
I mean, it's almost like a common sense thing, like people who cook. Those are some of the people who cook like with raw meat, right?
Yeah. When
you deal with raw meat, you don't go and grab other stuff. You have to wash your hands first, right?
Is that cross contamination?
Exactly. Boom. You got it. So it's the same type of technique. So if you ever seen any of the ER movies or ER TV shows, when the doctor who's doing the surgery, he gets in there, he's washing, he's all up in his elbows, boom, 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 puts on the gloves. What happens? He does this number right here, right?
Yeah.
It's like this. I can't touch nothing, can't touch it. But that's not how we're engaging. So as much as we're doing to protect ourselves, we let down our guard because we think we have something to protect us. And that sometimes leads to the contamination. So we have to be careful even when we're protected.
Sound really
yes. And also to kind of add to that, when they talk about the professions, they're also talking about minorities being more so. I know they said that white people are more likely to have jobs where they can perform their jobs at home, as opposed to black people, minorities who have jobs to where, whether they be, serve at a restaurant, like you say, the cab and the Uber industry, things like that, where, your job cannot continue when you go home. They were saying that that's an effect too, to where those jobs are either there getting paid or you're not. So, people have to make the decision between, do I go to work and put myself at risk to keep food on the table, or do I, just shut everything down and not have money to provide for my family? So it's right. People have to make a decision between those two. And, some people made a decision to go out and continue to provide for their family, but they've also, put themselves at risk, and they've, picked up the virus as well. So,
yeah.
what I feel like we could go like a million different ways because these issues are they like really large. Like it seems like there's like we're just on the second topic so far, and this one issue is presenting five what five five problems so far: cross contamination, improper training, or just undertrained on how to deal with
Mhm.
hazardous materials. And then we have the different types of industries that people are stuck in, or I'll say stuck for the pandemic, but that are currently working in, and they can't change horses midstream. So well, that's at least two issues.
Mhm.
And then you got that theory about well the definition of an essential worker. I didn't know that's what the definition was, but I didn't know it was that serious. I didn't know it was essential because if they stop working,
Yeah.
institutions collapse.
Yeah,
So
like grocery store workers. I mean, they've become essential workers because people have to continue to eat. So
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. Um, third point. Hey, Elliot, guys, Elliot is giving us some great thoughts to consider. I
Mhm.
don't dismiss them. It is just that we're really going to try to stick to the medical side of it and get as many explanations as we can while we have Glenn here in this episode. Um, but Elliot, that comment about electing officials that would have a better response to this type of situation, I think that's an excellent question. One that deserves a deep dive that I think you could come on the show and help us do. I would. I don't have a problem with that. Pledge you. I think that's an awesome idea.
for sure.
Uh, the third thing, and this the one that just grinds my gears, says insufficient information. Uh, Basically, we don't we don't know better, and it's not a single reason issue for that. Us not knowing better.
I mean, I'll go ahead and address it. You know, from what we saw Friday,
Mm-hmm.
we it was another show that had the luxury of having Dr. Simmons on, and I mean, he was spitting information the same way he is spitting information now. And if you read the comment section, I mean, people were just getting out of their Uber, you know, from being an Uber driver, and they were dismantling what a doctor was saying. I mean, it was just crazy, and it's almost like they were using these conspiracy theories, you know, so we could have, you know, avoid the responsibilities that we have, you know, that we have to hold ourselves to. And so, I mean, that was just a small example of it, of just as say you have somebody that's here to provide you with information, not just provide you with information, but provide you with how you should think and approach research and information that gets disseminated. And
Right.
people were just, you know, just saying this dude's not really a doctor, questioning, you know, how you got educated. It was ridiculous. I'm happy that you didn't read the comments, but I
Yeah.
mean,
Nah.
it really was horrible, and I think that goes into play with how we receive information and dismiss information as well. So
Mhm.
I think that's a real big problem, and that was on display Friday on the other show that we were part of. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely there's we um Black Americans are in a really interesting position because on one hand we have access to a lot of stuff that folks anywhere else in the world don't even have access to. Now, I'm not saying that there's no oppression. I'm not saying there's no racism or discrimination or anything like that, but we still have a certain level of access. And with that, we don't always appreciate when folks are going to take advantage of that access and then say, okay, now I'm going to come back with this. Now let's see how we can use it. Right. And, you know, for the life of me, like I deal with that every day. So, and that's one of my things I tell people, like, my life is basically asking questions, figuring out if I know what I'm doing, and I'm willing to admit in public that I am wrong. That's what I do. And I vet everything I do. And I'm willing to argue in public with anybody, go toe to toe with anybody, because that, like, my credentials, you know, like you can trace my lineage in terms of my education. You know, everybody I learned from. Anybody who comes to me and has any disagreements, do the same and let's talk. Let's see your work. Let's see your volumes of work that you've made with your own hands. Because we need to do that as a people, is to say, let's take the best of what we get from anything. Let's vet it, let's break it down, and then make sense of it, because there is a lot of information going around. And honestly, most of it is regurgitation of the same one person. It's not a collective amount of information. It's one person's information that's getting echoed over and over again. And that's not knowledge. That's not knowledge. I mean, we saw what happened in the elections, you know, when some Russian bots got involved. They say one thing, it gets echoed, and then people start believing it without anybody checking what the source is.
So what I think you're addressing is something I kind of wanted. I teach fifth graders. This is something that we have to tackle as early as second grade. I think even first graders deal with this, but it's the scientific method. This is when we take a theory or a statement, whether it be true or false, and we investigate it to prove the accuracy, I mean, is it a true statement or not? You know?
Right. You make a true statement, or you make a statement you believe to be true. Mm-hmm. You say, this is happening because of this. And then you investigate to see if that's true. If it's true. You don't know. You made a statement. You have a hypothesis. So you make a statement without the evidence yet, and then you find the evidence.
My bad. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Mike Grady, another homie. He's an alpha, so y'all forgive him. But he's a smart brother. He's an engineer. I think he's at Georgia Tech. But anyway, it's another brother I feel like we could have on the show at some point. He left a comment to address the mask concept we were just talking about, and how it he was looking at some information that he researched, and he was talking about the reasons that the mask and the cloth that people are creating at home may not be as good as another mask. So I'm gonna try to skim it, but he was saying the best available mask would be a P100. Apparently 100 means it filters 100% of the particles, but unfortunately the Rona is smaller than the mask can filter, but we are able to filter the sputum or the phlegm or the fluid
sputum
that is connected to the virus. And so that's why the mask will be effective. Can you talk to that point?
Yeah, so the idea of being able to trap or block things that are microscopic. So one of the projects we're working on right now, we're actually going to have to filter a large volume of something. Mm-hmm. And so in order for us to do that, we have to kind of exclude a whole bunch of stuff. So you start working at the micro and the nanometer scale. Now, the reality is that viruses are very, very small. So if you were to take a bacteria, okay, a virus is smaller than that. So if you can't see bacteria, and then you got something that's small enough to infect bacteria, that's the scale we're working on. And so, yeah, that does make a lot of sense that technically you're not filtering out virus, you're filtering out virus plus some additional substance that's creating some more size, some more mass, that gets blocked and it clogs up. So that's why you can only wear these filtered masks for so long, because they eventually get clogged. They eventually stop being able to stop anything because they're just full of stuff. And there are measures in some facilities
from December.
Yeah. You probably need another one.
Another one.
Yeah.
My bad. I just.
Okay. No. That's because a lot of people don't understand that. It's not a permanent thing. These things are supposed to be disposable. So again, understanding kind of that whole biohazard medical waste kind of an issue. It's like, it's a one-time use device. It's not a gas mask. And the gas mask, you know, most of them have those little things on it that you replace that. That's a filter. It's like your vacuum cleaner.
Really?
Your vacuum cleaner don't work real good if you don't change it out that filter. It clogs.
Okay.
So yeah.
That. All right, Mike. We appreciate that, bro. That we got some background information on that. I think the next thing we wanted to tackle was let's see, fourth point. Oh, let's get into it because Elliot hinted on it, and I definitely want to talk about it. This is my area of expertise. Man, I think a lot of us don't have the information we need or believe officials because of our history. And I know, you know, we have experiences, you know, we have, was it Miss Evers Boys?
The public health study that was carried out at Tuskegee. Yeah.
And we have we have tons of stories of how we were approached by officials telling us we were receiving treatment or vaccines for something when we're actually being experimented on. And Elliot's comment lends to this notion. He says, we're conditioned not to know better, institutionalized. Segregation has presented challenges in all levels, blah, 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 right? So he's saying basically between policies keeping us out of the right facilities and personal experiences and anecdotes and a culture that just is endued with distrust of officials, how can we combat that? I mean, I know we can't fix it today or tomorrow, but what can we do? What's a good step?
I mean, that's you know, so again, my decision to attend an HBCU was a very deliberate thing because I was blessed to have experiences and mentorship where I was able to go to a predominant school and be okay, right? But then I realized, like, I'm not getting jewels here. I'm not being told how I'm supposed to receive this information because I know that there's a lot of bias. I know there are things, there are conversations, there's information that I'm not receiving. And by going to a place like the school that I went to, which is over, you know, it's one of four remaining Black medical schools in the country.
Meharry?
And the reality of that experience was that we can complain about the situation, okay? We can talk about that. The history will never change. That's fact. The history will never change. But we have to start moving in a different direction if we want the future to look better than what it looks like right now in the present, right? Okay. And folks aren't investing in things that can help people that have a system level effect. We have anecdotal, you know, evidence. We have people saying that, okay, if you do this thing, it will work because my friend did it. And that might be true. But unfortunately, Black Americans are genetically a very diverse group of people, let alone culturally or based on, you know, just how they do their thing. And the reality of that is that it might work for one Black person. It doesn't even work for the next Black person. Y'all both Black, but that don't mean you're the same. We're not a monolith.
That we
biologically. What's up?
What's an example of the I'm thinking you're talking about home remedies. Is that what I'm getting here?
Home remedies, even some naturopathic, like legitimate naturopathic remedies. They don't necessarily work for everybody, and they definitely don't work when you're in the midst of actually being sick. You know, most of the times it's preventative medicine. But if you break your leg, you don't put no onion on the bottom of your foot. You go see a surgeon. You go see somebody to set that bone.
Yeah. Put some tussin on it.
Thank you.
Put some put tussin on the broken arm and fix it.
Let that tussin get
in there. But here's the thing. That's usually people are having these arguments about that kind of stuff because they have limited knowledge of African history. Because African history, you have surgery, okay? You have cesarean sections being done in the jungle, okay, where they were using antiseptics.
What's that?
They were using analgesics. There's history that has all of that. That's why I tell people that they get disconnected from it. Go ahead, man. What's up?
What's an anti-Jesus?
I'm sorry. So an antiseptic basically means it kills any bacteria. So like if you were to ever go under surgery, you got to make sure you ain't got no bacteria getting into your body because you'll die. Okay. Analgesics are the things that make you not feel pain. Okay. So this is, I mean, there is evidence. So until people are really well versed in broad level of African history, you can't come to me and argue that your science is superior to my science, because my science is, my ancestry is connected to that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like, you know, you can come see me. My lab address is right there on the internet. You Google my name, it's right there. Come see me. So
what you're saying is issue number 3 in the HuffPost article is threefold. We don't trust, we don't trust, we don't seek, and then we're unaware of who we are.
There's a valid argument for that, I think, because I'm not saying that any of that stuff is little, because again, even me as a Black man, I have a hard time going into certain spaces and being okay just because I know the history and I know the bias. Hell, if I don't tell anybody my full name, my title is a part of my full name now, right? They'll try. Like every doctor I see, I ask a question to see just how stupid they're gonna sound. Honestly.
Man. All right. Yeah, this is kind of heavy, man. One, because I think we all know some older generation family members, friends that, you know, this particular issue hits home with. You know, I know a lot of guys that avoided doing some routine checkups because that's just not a part of the culture, right? So, another great comment: how do we think the pandemic will impact us culturally and socially? In this particular regard, I hope it gets us into more conversations like this one, then to start getting us to take two things more serious: becoming part of the system and not necessarily becoming an agent for it, but becoming a representative or an ambassador for our own communities, like Glenn, so that we can have people that we can trust because they look like us or come from places with similar experiences that can speak to us in the way that we need and understand and I guess would it be empathize with our stories, because I know that's a very common thing that we go to facilities, specifically our women, and we're complaining about complications during pregnancies and childbirth procedures, and a lot of times we're being dismissed, and ultimately it's leading to some extreme complications, even death. So I say the first thing, man, is to make it more of a priority for us to become part of that system so that we can start to build facilities and places that will help us trust and believe the information that we're getting. Because right now, it sounds like you're saying, man, we just ignorant.
Well, the thing is, and I would correct that a little bit of what you said, or I would modify it, because I don't think you have to become a part of the system, but you have to understand what's real and what's imaginary. Because we know that we have issues that, and there was a comment that was made, and I'm not even on Facebook. I kind of sort of refresh the page every now and then, but we know that preventing issues is always better than dealing with crisis, right? We have plenty of people, Black folks, who've been trained in midwifery, who've been trained in surgery. Like, we have a lot of folks who are not antagonistic to the issues that the Black community has. The issue, more than anything, is that we don't have a lot of places for them to go. We don't support, like the same way a lot of people don't necessarily buy Black, it's the same way they don't support folks when they're going through. You have these medical students, these dental students, scientists, they're out there struggling, but they're struggling in the system. When they come out, there's no place for them to necessarily go, and then they're not necessarily received well. People are sitting there acting like they're a pariah, like they somehow did something wrong, when most of the time the motivation for them to get into those spaces was because of the issues Black folks go through.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that we can't be in the system, but we should always have a mindset to create things that are going to be self-sustained, that no one else has jurisdiction over, other than maybe possibly the fact that we might build a skyscraper. And so we might be in somebody's what is it, the air zone or whatever they call that?
Yeah.
But that's it. You know, so like having, what was, remember School Days? You know, and they were always talking about the college divesting, right? It's like, don't tie yourself to things that mean that it's going to change your agenda. I think we need to be more in that mindset. I mean, it might be revolutionary, it might not be, but why don't we have more clinics that are being run in neighborhoods where the preventative medicine can be happening right there? You don't have to go somewhere else.
Right. It's a great point. Basically, we need to be self-sustained so that we don't
like any other predominant culture or any other defined culture within the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that there's an antagonism to the idea, like Black is threatening. Black only is threatening. We have to accept that and continue to do it, though.
True. All right. Yeah, I'm out of points for concept 3, fellas. Any other points we think we need to address under the lack of information category?
We got to be willing to have conversations, because I'll never say that I know absolutely everything. That's the last thing I want to say. Mm-hmm. So anytime anyone has an opinion, it might be a little far to the left, it might be a little far to the right, but be willing to have dialogue, because somewhere in there we can figure out what's real and then act accordingly. Because any person, like if we were in a war right now and the general didn't want to listen to what his scout said because he already had in his mind what was right, he's gonna lose. Your scout is telling you something because they out there where you're not. So I'm in a different position than I was when I was living poor as a kid, living in the projects in Florida. Okay, so my perspective is a little different now than it used to be. So if somebody who lives still in that type of situation tells me something, I'm like, all right, let's talk about it. Let's see where that can be applied to, to change the condition for the better or whatever. Like, we got to be able to talk. Like, we can yell and argue and disagree, but we don't have to kill each other because we disagree.
That's true. I think we pretty much covered that one. Topic number 3. It looks like the last thing we got to deal with is higher rates of underlying health conditions. Did we touch on that already?
I mean, yeah, we've been in and out of that one, but we can go into some depth if it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it before, but I know that in the conversations that we've had since Friday, that you've kind of broken that down, in different ways. So,
I can talk about one specific point from a research standpoint. What we're looking at.
That's good.
Okay, so like currently, I live in a place that has a pretty small percentage of the population is African American, and so typically people would think, oh, you don't have to be worried about those kinds of issues, right? But the reality is that the issues that people have, they tend to take with them, and sometimes, unknowingly, they will transmit behaviors, they will transmit beliefs that will make those same behaviors get replicated in their children and stuff like that. So one of the things that we're really interested in doing is taking a different kind of approach. So a lot of people have been like, okay, we're going to have these barbershops. We're going to do this research, and we're going to get the information to the people. We're going to get it to the men. And I'm really, really interested in men's health, which is interesting because men with COVID-19, men are disproportionately affected compared to women. And then the underlying chronic diseases are also more adversely affected. And so Black men having those two things working against them, we're interested in trying to figure out how to get Black men to be more involved in their healthcare, because statistically, they are less likely to do everything. One aspect of it, only one aspect of it, is tied to historical understanding of distrust of the system. But a lot of it is tied to the reality of how you have to live every day. Because not every man, not every Black man, for instance, is a deadbeat dad, for one. Okay. So we got to get that out there. Okay. I'm a father of 2 and I take care of mine, no matter where they are on the planet. Okay. And the reality of that alone, because a lot of people know about the single mom situation, right? Where it's like the mom will sacrifice and not do things to make sure the kids have. Well, fathers are out there doing that too. Even if they're not in the same household, they're out there doing it too. And because of that, they elect a lot of times to not take care of their health because they don't think they can afford it. They can't take off to go do it.
We're talking about men.
Men, Black men, right. Exactly. So I'm flipping it back to men.
Elliot said something earlier. Him and Mike got a good little thread going on over here in the comment section about using the Wakanda handshake because we social distancing, right? And so Elliot took it like a really large picture view of it and saying, how is the pandemic going to affect African American men's relationships to each other due to the social distancing? Is this going to cause a bigger or wedge or whatnot between us? And then Mike had a very witty response. You know, we could do the Wakanda handshake, and everybody know what that means. That's like a head nod or a salute. But when you said we don't actively participate in the medical arena,
we have a tendency not to take care of our health in that way.
Right. I think one thing I always kind of looked at is what is going to be, I think what me and you talked about actually last week, we need the value of our mental value of the medical system to change. What's going to be the thing that sparks the men to want to change that behavior? Fellas, that's
so I think it comes back to folks around them. And again, I'm putting my money where my mouth is with this statement, because this is where part of my research is going right now. I think it takes the women in their lives to circle back and show that they value that. Not just you just gonna kind of sort of value it. Like, schedule the appointment. You know he's not gonna go unless you schedule it. Schedule it. Let him know that you got him. Help him figure out ways, because sometimes, and again, as a Black man, I speak for myself, but I've had conversations with other men, and a few of us, anecdotally, like maybe 10 of us, have had the same thought, where we get locked into a mindset, right? Where I know I have to do this way, and I'm not going to do it any other way. It takes somebody coming to you sometimes and saying, hey, I'm on your side. Let's figure out another way that's not going to compromise the fact that you put in that work. Strong Black man, you put in that work. But let's think of another way to do this that doesn't compromise that work. So like, if I know that I need to work 40 hours a week straight, like, and I got to work 7 days a week, so I need to work 60 hours a week, I may not have any real estate in my mind to think any other way. And sometimes it takes those women who take care of us, who either take care of us or are taking care of our children, who've raised us. And I'm not talking about your girlfriend necessarily. I'm talking about wives, sisters, daughters, aunties, godmamas, because historically women have that role. Mm-hmm. Historically, in an African context, that is something that women know. And they've been doing that since we've been forcefully brought here. And then also, just based on biology, they tend to be more engaged in their healthcare anyway.
Yeah.
So what would happen if you told women exactly what men need to be doing? The same stuff you told the man. Now the man hears it, but he may not do it. So Tell the women the exact same information and say, hey, you now know what he's supposed to be doing. It's no guess. And what we found through surveys is that these women already know that they want to be involved, but they don't have the information to push it. But once you give them some of that extra oomph, it's like, we're supporting you in trying to keep your household, your family together, or keep your communities together by not letting the black men that you still have there die. You know what I'm saying? So, because I mean, we already know that a lot of men are not in place.
We know, just from personal experience. I know I talked to Glenn a couple of times, not Glenn, excuse me, Pledge, a couple of times about, my personal experience dealing with women that are actively engaged in community health, and how I learned a lot based on the information that she brought home. So I think we might even be delving into, I think we got like 3 topics we need to tackle, because so it's like a rabbit hole. But man, we killed our 45-minute goal. Didn't make it. Missed it by about 20 minutes. But that's cool, because I think we're getting good information. We're getting engagement from some of the brothers online. I think these guys need to be on the show. Elliot, Michael, Glenn, certainly like to have you back as often as we can.
Definitely.
We need to have more of these discussions. I would love to hear from the women that are in relationships where they have some influence on a brother's outlook on his health. I also think we need to talk more about jobs. I know players have some extensive training when it comes to managing finances. Was that the MetLife situation?
New York Life.
Yeah, my bad. New York Life. So I think the community has the resources, even though it might be 10 to 15 people. In terms of, if you think in terms of followers and subscribers that are listening, or viewers that might see this podcast, but we have the resources. We have a medical professional. We have a financially literate professional. We have a publicly elected official, or a guy that serves in that capacity, with Elliot. And then we got a couple brothers that are engineers in the comments too. We have everything we need. Now we just need to get mobilized and get people willing to do the work. And from what Glenn is saying, and I think there's some credence to it, we're gonna need some help from willing sisters to help us out. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It would definitely foster some more unity, because Lord knows I get tired of seeing the memes online with this extremely divisive culture that we now have in the black community. That I think is just only propagated on social media. But
some more bots, man. Some more bots.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's bots, but it seems really influential because, it's just bad. But anyway, fellas, I think we tackled all 4 points. I think we tried to address as many of the comments as we could, and we're gonna need more time. I don't want to keep everybody up all day, glued to the set. I definitely appreciate the viewers that are here, and I don't want to be greedy with your time. So, yeah, with that in mind, anybody got any closing remarks?
Man, I would just like to say, man, it was a lot of good information. Thank you, Dr. Simmons, for joining us and, and kicking knowledge. We appreciate it. And as I said, hopefully we have a lot more to discuss. So hopefully you'll come back and join us in the future and continue the conversation. But I enjoyed it.
All right. Yeah. I just want to say, first off, I told y'all already I talked too much. So we were going to go over time. But no, I just want to say thank you to everybody who checked in. I don't have Facebook, so I can't comment to nobody. So I saw some people. Hey, hi, mama. I'm talking to your mom. No, I think for real, we have to be willing to have a dialogue. Again, I think that what we need to do is going to take a certain amount of radicalism that isn't the kind that people grew up thinking about. Okay, I think it's going to be more so in the mind. We're going to have to start thinking differently and understanding that conflict is not always going to be an open thing. I live in a place right now where literally people are the most passive aggressive I've ever seen in my life. Like nobody will be in your face and say anything, which means that you have to be very, very strategic about how you move and be watching folks. Okay. But that's the funny thing about that is that that's how academia is. Like, so I've seen that already. So being here, it's like, oh, this is like me being at work all the time now. I think we all as a collective body need to start thinking about that. And of course, you know, it's going to be different for different people. And we got to allow that difference to exist. You know what I'm saying? But we have to be willing to come together even with those differences. I don't care what you doing, as long as you trying to get ahead and you ain't trying to, you know, mess nobody up at the same time. We should be able to talk.
Sure.
That's the double truth, Ruth. I got that from Spike Lee. Listen, I had to bring some humor to it, man. This is a very heavy situation, man. I think it's very important. I know for myself personally, I know some things, but I still need to do better. And hopefully the viewers and everybody that took a chance on us take the same mindset. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here, and we'll see y'all next time.
For sure.
All right, y'all. Have a good one.
Peace.
Peace.
Like